This is part 2 of the creating a water surface texture, and we're continuing from the previous lesson where we nested the fractal for water composition into the water composition. So now we're going to continue by creating some perspective for our fractal noise. So what we're going to do is come down to the timeline panel. Let's select the composition, fractal for water, and let's come over here and activate this option here, which converts this into a 3D layer. So this little cube icon showing up here being activated will then give us the ability to come up to the tools. We'll click on this fourth tool here, the rotation tool, and then be able to rotate this particular layer in 3D space. So in order to see what's going on here, I'm just going to zoom up. And a shortcut for zooming up inside of After Effects is you can hit the greater than sign or the period to increase the magnification, or you can press the comma or the less than sign to decrease. So I'm going to come up here a little bit just so we can see this sort of triple axis showing up here. If I hover over the center, we'll see the z-axis. If I hover over the green arrow, this is the y-axis. And if I hover over the red arrow, this is the x-axis. So what I want to do is sort of tilt this away from me as if we were sitting at the surface of the water looking into the distance. So what I'm going to do is come in here and click and hold on the x-axis, and I'm just going to move my mouse upward, holding the mouse button down. So this will give me the ability to rotate this around in 3D space. And so what I'm going to do is rotate this to about right here. And now if you want to see the exact number, we can twirl open the properties for this composition. Let's go into transform, and let's go down to orientation, which is available because this is a 3D layer. And here we have the degree settings for the X, Y, and Z. So you'll see that the x-axis is 288 degrees. If I hover over this and scrub the number higher, you'll see we can rotate this around just like we did by clicking on the arrows with the tools. So I'm going to bring this back to 288. You could also come in here and rotate the y-axis and the z-axis. But for the moment, I just want to leave this at 288 degrees for the x-axis. Then let's come up to the composition panel. Let's change our tool to the move tool, and let's click and drag, and let's move this around so that the fractal noise will still fill the entire composition. So move this to about right here. And so now the fractal noise down at the bottom appears closer, and the fractal noise at the top appears further away. So again, this is going to give us that perspective for the water texture. So now I'll go down to the timeline panel. I'm going to just close up all of the options here. Then with this selected, let's come back to the effects and presets. Let's delete the search for fractal noise, and let's come in here and search for CC Glass. So I'll type in the word glass. We're going to go for this one here under the stylized group called CC Glass. Let's click and drag and drop this and apply this to the composition. So as I mentioned in the last video, the reason that we put this into a composition is so that the CC Glass effect is affecting all of the fractal noise settings. If we had the fractal noise effect and the CC Glass effect on the same solid, the CC Glass effect would not affect any of the pixels from the fractal noise. They'd be added together, but one wouldn't affect the other. So to see what this allows us to do, let's go back to the effect controls. Let's toggle open the surface properties. And down here, let's come in here and change a few of the properties inside of here. So let's start with softness. If we come in here and scrub softness to a lower number, you'll see that the effect is actually much stronger or makes crisper edges. I'll come in here and zoom up a little bit so we can see what's happening. I'll come back up to softness and let's increase this. The higher I increase this, the sort of softer the effect is across the dark and light areas of the fractal noise. The height setting allows us to control how tall the effect is, basically modeling the surface of the fractal noise. So the higher I make this, in conjunction with how soft the effect is, we can get some of the light effects here to look really sort of spiky or hard-edged. And then we have the displacement amount. This controls how much movement we have from the effect across the darkest or lightest pixels. So the higher the displacement, the more differential we get between those different contrasting areas. And as I've mentioned a few times throughout the class, one of the best things about After Effects is you can just come in here and play with the different settings. If you're not sure what they do, just come in here and just scrub the numbers around and just see what effects you can get. And now the properties that I want to use for the water surface texture are setting the softness to 17. Let's hit tab. That'll bring us to height. For the height, we're going to set this to 100. Then a tab. We're going to set the displacement to about 167. And then let's toggle open the light properties and let's come down to light intensity and let's bring this down to about 60. So this is going to make the overall effect a little bit darker, but this is going to play really well with the gradient overlay that we'll do in the next video. And so with this set, I'll come back to the composition panel and I'll change my view to fit in window. So now we have a texture that looks pretty good for maybe a swimming pool or a small body of water. And so what I want to do at this point is stretch the waves out a little bit so they look like waves that might be in a larger pond or maybe even a river. So to do that, we're going to go inside of the fractal for water composition. And we can do that by double clicking on the composition panel here, or you can double click on the composition in the timeline panel. And in either case, we're now back inside of that original composition that we created that has our solid with the fractal noise applied. And so now what I'm going to do is come up here and select the fractal noise solid. Then let's come down to the timeline panel. Let's toggle open the properties. Let's toggle open transform. Let's find the scale. Let's uncheck the link between the height and the width. And let's come in here and just increase the scale of the width. So I'll come in here and drag this, and I'm going to drag this to about 600%. So I'll drag this up to about right here. And now with the fractal noise stretched out, let's come up to the contrast settings for the fractal noise, and let's just increase this a little bit. Let's bring this up to about 145. This way we'll get some of the contrast back that we lost by stretching out the width. So once we have that in place, down in the timeline panel, let's come down here and select the water composition, and we can now see the effect of the stretched out fractal creating much longer waves that we would see in a larger body of water. And so now that we have our water surface texture, next we'll add some color to this overall effect.